The thing that was really cool about the initial reaction to the band was that we were getting a great response. And so, you know, whereas originally I thought, oh, this will just be a side project, little recording thing, I pretty soon realized that this could actually be its own thing. So we started playing a lot of gigs around New York and playing, I remember I thought today of Willow Street in Portchester, and we started getting a bunch of nice festivals. We started going to Florida, we went to Chicago eventually, but back in the day, I guess I was pushing to get us over to Europe.
Well, you know, it was such a shock in a lot of ways because we did not conceive of this as a performing group. Originally it was going to be a demo, and then it became a recording project. And Buck said he would put it out, and we never, at the time, we didn't think of it as a performing group. And then we did that show at Manhattan Center, and it was just really shocking to see how well received the band was. And it was just so much fun to play that we thought, well, let's see if we can keep doing this. And you know, we were all involved in the other bands, so it wasn't a full-time thing, but we were able to piece together a few gigs here and there. And then the European tour in '95, that was the first time that I really thought, wow, this is actually could be something.
We got a lot of respect in Europe. There was a certain kind of aesthetic for jazz-influenced music that we didn't quite get here. We knew over there that they would really embrace us. We actually did our first tour with Thomas Schultz. The name of the agency was Booby Trap, and he was the lead singer of the German band The Busters, who we had toured with years ago. And it was kind of like through him that we got this first tour in March of '96. It was a 12-day tour. We did 11 shows in Germany, 1 show in Poland. The thing that was really auspicious about that show in Poland was that we were the first American ska band to play there after the Berlin Wall had come down. When we drove into the country, we got over the border, we turned on the radio, and it was our version, me playing Harlem Nocturne. So it was really just incredible, you know, just like we were really on the cusp, it felt like, of breaking this music.
I remember being in Hamburg in this little tiny club, but it was packed, and we're playing one of my songs, and people were dancing in groups. Like, wow, this is pretty cool, you know. So it was different from, you know, what I'd done in the Toasters, because it was definitely more a project that I had more creative input into, and you know that Fred and I put this together, and really, so it was really cool to see that. In Europe, it's always been kind of the home turf for ska jazz. I think that was the start of the whole, you know, the whole touring thing, and that really changed the nature of the band, I think, too, because it became more of a group. And that's why, as much as I like the first record, I like the second record more, because it reflects the growing together we did on the road. And so it's definitely more, we're more of a unit than an all-star group, which is what it started out as.
The way that, you know, I was booking the band at the very beginning was that I was Rocksteady Freddie from the Toasters, that we had this new project that was featuring, you know, these quote-unquote, you know, star musicians from the Skatalites, from the Toasters, from the Scofflaws, and that was kind of like my in to get the band booked. Eventually, you know, I wanted to be known, and we were known for ourselves. So what happened on this first crazy tour was that they booked the show as the New York Ska-Jazz Ensemble, but they said, you know, featuring members of Toasters, the Skatalites, and the Scofflaws, and they really put our name, the New York Ska-Jazz Ensemble, not huge on the poster, and they put these other names kind of bigger. So we played this gig at the Pfefferberg, which was a great club in Berlin, and on this particular, on the first tour, Devon James couldn't come with us because he was doing something with the Skatalites. So we got a sub. What happens at this show, it was a crazy night, as things could be in Berlin, and we come out on the stage, and you know, there were no older black men on the stage at that point because Devon couldn't make it. So you know, I think at first some of the fans are like, where are the Skatalite guys? And you know, it's like, oh, well, Devon couldn't make this one, we got a sub. And then after we do our set, the fans thought that there were going to be other bands. and and they and because the young promoter was a little deceptive, things got very crazy to the point where we just had to get out of Dodge, and you know, I just packed the band up and said, let's get out of here. And there was no fault of our own, and I would never have wanted to deceive, you know, the public. So we made sure that going forward, nobody ever tried to pull that kind of thing, because we certainly wanted to be known on our own merits, and we didn't want to, you know, take advantage of people for sure. But that, I mean, it was a crazy night. I remember Carrie Brown was cleaning up his piano, and a beer bottle whisked by his head. He felt it in his hair, smashed on the back wall, and we knew it was time to pack up and go. When we first started, this was kind of viewed as like, this will be our off-side project, we'll be able to get a record out there. Well, after we did that first show at Manhattan Center and we started getting a lot of gigs and people really seeming like they loved it, and we're getting a lot of press, and we were getting, people were, you know, they were playing the first record on a bunch of radio stations. A year later, it was like, all right, let's start thinking about the next record. How can we expand? How can we evolve? And, you know, how can we take the ska jazz concept and really just embellish? We were always looking to raise the bar. I personally thought that we need to show the world in a way that ska music is real, it needs to be taken seriously, and here are some very talented schooled musicians who are doing so. And by doing that, you're elevating the genre, so to speak. So it was very important that we show the world that it could be very, you know, intricate music, that it wasn't as simplistic as many thought, and that if you were a high level musician, whatever you were going to sink your teeth into, it was going to really have the ramifications of quality. So that went along with the recordings, the repertoire, the you know, the way you look on stage, the show you present, everything across the board. You want to raise the level. Pop music in the 40s was big band music, and people used to dance to popular jazz music. I mean, that's what my parents grew up on, and I was greatly influenced by that. Well, I felt like we should take that concept and really embrace it with the ska jazz. So I felt like it was almost like taking that idea 30 years later and just embracing it. In other words, why can't instrumental music be commercial? Why can't a lot of people listen to it? Why can't people dance to it? So that was another big point from the beginning, but that we were definitely embracing with the second record. It's interesting that when we first started, there was something like one vocal on the first record. I think on this next record we did 2 vocals. The vocals have been slowly evolving because we definitely noticed that people relate to the vocal music, so it was always something that we wanted to have as part of our repertoire. I mean, we were clearly an instrumental band. That was our focus, that was our forte. For the audience, we don't want them to ponder any of that. We just want them to come to the show, have a good time, dance, and have fun. So if we can throw in a couple of vocal songs, so much the better, and it lightens it all up. From the beginning, we always were recording our own music. You know, original music was definitely a part of this from the beginning. You know, we did take the jazz standards, we were treating it with the ska jazz, but we were also putting that imprint on our own music. And, you know, I've always felt that it's great to have different writers in the band. You know, throughout my tenure as the band leader, this has sort of varied. There have been a few records where I wrote the lion's share of everything. But back in the day, I mean, we had Carrie Brown, we had Victor Rice, we had myself, we had Rick. You know, guys who were involved in lots of projects, had a lot of influences. So obviously, you know, you're going to have a different flavor from each person, and I think that's great for a band. If you have different writers, you're going to have different influences and appeal to different people. Think it makes it a little more interesting, particularly if the majority of it is instrumental. You really want to have different kinds of vibe. I don't know that the concept changed. We really were extending it. You know, everybody had his his own sort of a tilt on it, and because everybody was so talented, what invariably happened is people would write the songs at home, bring it to rehearsal, it would get molded a little bit, but ultimately it was usually the composer's statement. From the first record, where it was just this concept of like, let's do this, it's going to be fun, we want to play more, then it actually evolved into like, we're a band now, and I really embraced the band. I mean, it really became my driving force. So it was no longer like this little thing we did on the side. This was something that daily, you know, took up my energy, my emotionality, my psyche. I was, you know, the first couple of years I was going to the post office almost every day trying to book the band. I had a promo packet, I had pictures, I was accruing all the you know, the interviews and the newspapers and the articles, and I made a really nice package. I wanted to present it. Again, I always felt like, raise the bar. We're raising the bar of the musicians. Let's raise the bar of the packet I promote. Let's raise the bar of just how I'm presenting the band. In '96, right before we did this record, we got a European tour. So, you know, nobody was really doing that back in the day. I mean, a few bands were. So we were able to take what we were doing and kind of jump up a few levels. And I think, you know, I was clearly aware of the potential. We were getting great feedback from promoters, from fans. And so, you know, when you get positive feedback, you're going to embrace something. And it's no longer just, oh, I do this for fun. This was something I was pondering as my future. I believe that we should play songs. Even though we were using the jazz motif of you had a song and you improvised over it, I didn't really want players to like take like 20 choruses as, you know, old school jazz players did. I felt like you could say what you wanted to say musically in a couple of choruses. You could keep the audience's attention if you kept it shorter. Whereas if you just kept soloing and soloing and soloing, it kind of, to me, gets boring. So very much it was about playing songs. Even if they were instrumental, they were still songs, and we were still putting on a show. We would write the set list, we would follow the list. I would even start thinking about when I would talk to the audience. You know, I wanted to have a flow to the show. We're not just getting there, getting up on the stage and kind of saying, oh, what do we want to do tonight? You know, this is very much pre-thought out. I feel like repertoire is paramount to success. If you pick the right songs, if you put them in the proper order to have a kind of certain kind of flow that you want to the show, you're going to really please your audience. We evolved into Low Blow as more of a band. We maybe did have some of the swagger because we were doing very well with our other bands, and now we had this new project that was really taking off. People were gravitating towards it. They were really, you know, giving us a lot of positive feedback, and, you know, what more can you want? You know, you just want people to like what you're doing, and you want people to come to the shows. We were getting good audiences. We were making money. You know, with that kind of intention, you're going to keep going. You know, it's like, my attitude was like, let's keep building this thing.
We were at Waterfront Studio in Hoboken, which was where we did the first album. We actually did 2 songs elsewhere. We'd come off tour, the European tour, and we had a couple things that we've been doing. We like started out as sound check things and became part of the set. So we went in and recorded those, Blow in Blow, and which was Jonathan McCain's first lead vocal with us on record, and we did the Jive Samba thing, which became a real fan favorite very quickly. And so we knocked those out at Studio 900, which was our other sort of home away from home. And then for this one, we went back to Waterfront, and we loved Waterfront because it had all this old, great analog equipment. If you look at the cover of Low Blow, you'll even see the ribbon mic that we used for the horns on. We just had me and Fred in the room with that mic in between us. We recorded, I think, all 3 of the first 3 albums, or at least the first 2, at 15 IPS instead of 30. We did it at tape, half speed, like they used to do in the 50s and 60s. Partly it helped save some budget, but also we liked that warmer sound that we got with the half speed thing. That was what was great about Waterfront, is they had all these old things. They had the old mixing board from the Abbey Road studios. They had something from Sun Studios, I forget what. All these beautiful analog mics. Hammond B3 with the Leslie speaker, all that. There was a clavinet which turned up on this record on a couple songs. If you listen in Low Blow in Freddie's song and on I think on the Crusaders song, it's in there. Kerry played that, so that really helped. I think enhance the sound we were trying to get, which was sort of aiming for that Blue Note 1960s jazz sound in a lot of ways. So we went in there, and unfortunately, after we tracked up the basic stuff, Waterfront closed. So we had to mix back at Studio 900, which was fine too. We liked that place as well, but it was a little shocking to have to relocate in the middle of the project.
I don't recall who recommended Studio 900 to us, but great engineer there named Joe Johnson, who ended up, I liked a lot. We had a camaraderie with him, so in fact we did the next bunch of records there. It was a great room. We were still using the same concept. We played live in the room. Obviously, we needed big rooms so that we could have everybody in the cans, and be able to look at each other and just have the right dynamic so that we could get a nice live session. There is something to be said about using different rooms. You're going to have different influences. You might worry about continuity, but the truth of the matter is it was the same players, same format, and so I would even challenge someone to say if they could figure out which songs were recorded in Waterfront versus Studio 900. I felt like there was enough cohesion there that it worked. We were still going with the analog. We loved the sound that it gave us. I don't even know if Pro Tools was around at that point. It was getting there. There were different technologies. We loved the natural sound of the horns with the 2-inch tape. It seemed like you got more of that kind of sound. We were able to do it there at Studio 900 as well. So we stayed with that format. Low Blow, this was one of my originals. I used the baritone sax on this. I love the way the bari, works with the ska. It looks awesome on stage, for the chops. It gives you that gritty sound. The ultimate challenge of the bari is carrying the damn thing. It's very heavy. It's heavy around the neck. It's harder to be on a stage in a ska band where you're trying to move around a little bit. Playing wise, I've always really been able to morph from the tenor to the bari fairly easily. I never felt challenged, technically. It seems to blend in more with the rhythm section, whereas if you're just a tenor player with a rhythm section, you tend to stand out as more of a solo instrument. So you can kind of become more of the groove with the bari, and that's really the fun of it, because you could play more as part of the band.
I think Fred's Low Blow definitely sets a tone for the album right out of the gate. The flavor of that sort of, because it's based, not to get too technical, but a 7th chord with a sharp 9 in it, that really funky sound. It's like not major, it's not minor, it's like both, and that I think kind of sets the tone. You hear the use of the organ. There's a little bit of clavinet that gets thrown in there, and little thing to listen for the other obsessive people is that if you listen closely at one point, you can hear the 6-horn section from Professor Bebop playing the skank in the background, really faintly. You'll hear like a big fat horn section sound. We're not credited as being on the track, but we snuck them in there anyway, just for like 8 bars or so.
Jive Samba, I call this the choo-choo train ska. I particularly remember we were playing a gig at Bell's Brewery in, I think it's in Michigan, and as we were on the stage, it was outside, a train literally was going by, and you have this intro of our song, and if you listen to it, it's just a very simple kind of ska groove. I mean, Jive Samba, I guess that's a Nat Adderley song. It really worked well with this medium tempo ska. Through the years, the musicians have always loved blowing on this tune. It's a relatively easy form to play on. There really aren't that many changes, and it's just a nice groove. Everybody seems to really be able to sort of embrace their improv on this.
I had it on cassette when we were on tour. I was like, hey guys, we should try this out. And we did it as sound check, played it for an encore the same evening in Munich, and the crowd went crazy. And it was like never left the set after that.
Okay, great song. I'm actually singing it now in the band. Back then, Jonathan did it. Jonathan, you know, was with me in the Toasters, and he was singing backgrounds, and I always thought he had a great voice, and I'm sort of always surprised that he was never given the opportunity in that band. I mean, obviously he was behind the drums, so it makes it a little more difficult to step out. But I always had felt that he was a great singer, so I was like, he's in the Ska-Jazz. Let's use that. I mean, he's here. He sounds great, and you know, he looked great. The girls loved him, so you know, absolutely, let's use everything at our disposal. And you know, he's a great writer. He was very dedicated to the music. We had an American release and version, and then we actually had a European version. And on the American version, Steve Pietaster was the guest vocalist on Mr. Pitiful, and on the Euro version, Jonathan sang the lead. It was an Otis Redding song. It's got that blues kind of soulful, almost sad vibe to it. I've noticed that people just really relate to it. They love to dance to it. At some point in our lives, I think all of us can sort of relate to being rejected or not embrace. You know, somebody kind of did us wrong, and so I think everybody can kind of feel that. Centrifuge, one of Rick's songs. This was our opener for years and years and years. It doubles the bass and guitar. It's got that quintessential, you know, stick sound, and really works well as an opener. Relatively easy, although the last hit comes in on 4, which sometimes, you know, tricks sub-drummers. Works well. I always felt like it was a nice way to just to greet the audience. You know, it was medium to up-tempo, simple, but it really got the ska vibe.
Centrifuge was a case where we actually had been working on this Victor Rice song called Gravity that I know he recorded elsewhere eventually. It never gelled with us for some reason. There was something that always never quite worked right. And so what I did after we gave up on it was I went back and tried to write a song that was in a similar vein, you know, but didn't have the things that were tripping the band up. And and then also I was going for a Don Drummond kind of a vibe with that one too. I think the melody's got very much of a Don Drummond character to it. And so that one was pretty straightforward. There wasn't much more to it, but it became a live show staple, definitely. Again, partly because it's, you know, an easy one and fun to stretch out on.
Walk-In, this was a Miles tune. Sledge played on this one, so we had the 3 horns. I felt like we really mirrored the original 3 horns well. It just worked really nicely. I listened to it last night. My solo on this one really kind of got into that bluesy, kind of crazy drunk vibe almost that I kind of like just for the party element. The band got really raw there, and you know, it's a blues, but it swings.
Now, there's some question about the authorship of the song, and that's something that somebody I remember brought up in a review, that they said somebody referred to it as being a ripoff of an interesting Gene Ammons tune called Gravy, and I don't know the truth of that. I know that the guy, Richard Carpenter, who's credited as the composer, was like some hanger-on with Miles Davis, like a manager or something like that, and probably not the guy who wrote it. Now, who actually did, I don't know. Miles had a history of lifting songs from other people and claiming them as his own or other people's, and there's a lot of questionable authorship. So I don't actually know who's responsible for that melody, but it's a great tune.
Nasty by Nature, this was the song that I wrote about the serial killer who grew up next door to me. The craziest thing about this song was that back in the day I was performing with the Toasters, and I was somewhere in like Eastern Germany in the middle of nowhere, and this hippie guy comes up to me, and someone in the band had said what my past was, and he came up to me and said, "You're Joe Rifkin's neighbor?" And it kind of just amazed me that I was in the middle of what felt like nowhere in the boonies, and that this story had broken, and I at the time had not realized what a big deal it was, because he in fact was I hate to say this, but he had, you know, murdered more people in New York history than any murderer ever. So it was like big news. The other really insane story from back in the day at this time, Nasty by Nature, was that I was doing a gig at Kenny's Castaways one night. I was just walking in the village with my horn, getting ready for the show, and I saw Joel in a car, and there was a girl with him in the car. And I thought, oh, this is great, he finally has a girlfriend or whatever. It's very likely that, you know, he killed her because he was picking up prostitutes on the Lower East Side and, you know, then doing what he was doing. So it was all very mind-boggling. I mean, the irony of it, again, was that if you had asked me who on the street is going to be a serial killer, I would have picked another kid, because there was another kid who seemed more, you know, screwed up. Joel just seemed like, you know, not able to exist in society. Now, I wasn't living at my parents' house anymore when it went down, so I was a little removed from it. But of course, it was very disturbing. I mean, I had a bar mitzvah, and Joel went to my bar mitzvah. I have a picture of that. Been in the repertoire for all these years. It's steadily been getting faster and faster and faster. I always pretty much tell the band to play it as fast as possible. You'll notice that the keyboard melody is a melody. It's not really a solo. Earl now plays that, and again, it's a song, and it's a guitar feature. Definitely, you know, again, one of mine, going for the fast tempo, going for the rock element, the punk element, the rude boy element. The audience in Spain and Italy have embraced this for years. Now in Mexico, all these different countries, they really relate to this hardcore feeling. Teardrops from my eyes, because we have been going down to DC, Baltimore. We had done a bunch of shows at the Checkered Cabs. They were coming here. We had heard Kaz. We thought she sounded great. We thought it would be nice to add a female vocal on the record, and you know, again, the swing style, it was very conducive to what we were doing.
Kaz Gardner from the Checkered Cabs came in, and I brought in this Ruth Brown song called Teardrops from My Eyes, and she just nailed that, hit it right out of the park. I really love that recording. I was thinking about how he played sax and the kind of tunes he liked to play, and so this rhythm changes melody came to me, and I just wrote it out and brought it into the band, and that was it. He was kind of what I call like sort of blue collar jazz tenor player. He very like worked a lot of those really neighborhood jazz bars, playing for the people, you know, not playing, you know, for the rarefied intellectual audience, but really playing much more of bluesy, soulful, gritty kind of swinging style, and so that was kind of the flavor I was trying to get with that melody to capture sort of something that he could have played or he could have written.
Naima, okay, so this was a Coltrane song. Coltrane had written this for his wife, Naima. You have to, as a tenor sax player, you have to listen to him. He really brought the level of musicality to the instrument that just had never been there before. Beautiful sound, lyricism in the lines. Just, he had so many different phases. For me, you listen to Coltrane with like Johnny Hartman. There's a record playing ballads. You know, it's gorgeous. This guy was an absolute genius.
One of the standout tracks on that record. You know, I think that is for me, one of the things, the songs I think best epitomizes what we did with that band. Like going to really sophisticated harmonies, things that a Jamaican group would never have tried, but still trying to keep that rhythm underneath, and you know, just expand it, you know, put it into New York in the 90s instead of, you know, Jamaica in the 60s.
Really was a chance for us to slow down the tempo, kind of have my saxophone shine. I eventually did give a copy of this to McCoy Tyner. Great melody, beautiful melody, almost haunting. Professor Bebop, another one of Rick's originals. This harkens back to what we were talking about before, that we really felt like big band music back in the day was pop music. We wanted to embrace that with the ska jazz. Rick certainly did it on this one. He wrote a big band chart. We had the Scofflaws horns as guests. It was very fat. It was, if you listen to the track, you know, like the drum rolls, the setup, it's all that old school big band breaks, hits, and you know, thick harmony, big and fat.
Professor Bebop, that was actually one that predated the band. I'd written that a long time back, and there's actually a story behind that. It's my hometown of Charlottesville, Virginia. There was this late night radio DJ on the local UVA radio station. He called himself Professor Bebop. He played all these old R&B songs, and his theme music kind of had the flavor of that. So that song was kind of inspired by that. And actually, this is the real trivia. The chord progression, if you look at it closely, is derived from what is this thing called Love, the jazz standard. Although it's been modified a fair amount. So that was a song that I already had in my book, so to speak, and I just readapted it for the band. And that was, you mentioned the big band thing, arranging it out for 6 horns, which was really fun. That's one of my favorite things that we did, having the 3 saxes, 3 brass, and really getting that big full sound.
Carrie plays a nice organ solo at the end, a lot of riffing, and yeah, just a lot of fun to play.
Victor Rice's tune on this record is Hawaii. There's a little story with that too, by the way. That if you see, I was reminded of this because Victor put the lead sheet up on his Facebook page a few months ago, hand-drawn lines on the staff and everything. He would like write out his own manuscript paper on the road. So the reason it's called Hawaii is because this one is inspired by the Brady Bunch. There's an episode where they have a tiki that they bring back from Hawaii. And the little thing in the soundtrack on that episode that they play whenever the tiki is doing something weird is like da-da-da-da-da. And so that's in Victor's melody there. Ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da. So that's why he called it Hawaii. But I like that song. It really has a very Victor kind of a thing. You know, he had some harmonies that are very unique to the ska world, I think.
Interesting melody. Victor writes, you know, these jagged, interesting melodies. And Sledge plays a nice solo on there. And just great to have all the influences. Yo Mama, okay, so I actually had been playing this song from way back in the day, from when I, you know, my early 20s. I had been playing with some fusion bands out here on Long Island, and we were playing Yo Mama as sort of like a funk jazz instrumental. So when I brought it into the ska jazz, you know, it worked perfectly. Really, you know, the Crusaders, again, the way the trombone and the tenor meld, perfect on this song. I love the way Wilton Felder sounded. Just felt like the blend of the tenor and the trombone really worked. Slower song, you get to start with the bass, but it's got the funky influence. It was, it just really works. We still play it. Blow and Blow, I think Rick probably brought this in. He was definitely influenced, you know, by the New Orleans sound. You know, we always knew that the original Scatolites were very much affected by that sound. This was a sing-songy, easy song we could all sing. The chorus together, you know, simple chord scheme, swing style, it just works. People like to dance to it. Blue Lunar Ska, one of Carrie Brown's compositions, really, you know, intricate composition. We also, you know, had the trumpet on this, and I believe I also added the bari, so we had the 4-part horns on this, very thick kind of sound. You know, for me it was a nice a song to actually play a solo on. I do like the way I sound on that one. It was kind of like that eerie element to the solo. Just Carrie, you know, Carrie really is a really consummate musician. You listen to this, the harmonies that he's going there, you understand how the ska jazz really did stretch the genre. I mean, that song in many ways exemplifies how we weren't just playing simple songs. The harmony is very intricate.
Carrie Brown's Blue Lunar Ska, I think, is beautiful, and that's just, again, one of my 3 or 4 favorite ska jazz recordings, track by track. I love that sound. It's the 4 horns with the added baritone sax, and we had Sledge and the Toasters come in on that and a couple other tracks and to help round out the sound. And that's just a beautiful way to close the record.
Jenny Warman Reiter was the photographer on this. She was my wife at the time, and we, Rick and I definitely were thinking about having like a Blue Note style to the composition. We again had our own horns in there. She was taking the pictures. Those pictures are literally from the day of the studio, and we're like lining up our horns and just trying to get the right vibe, the right look. We had those old microphones in 900 or in Waterfront. We thought those were really cool. Again, we were hearkening back to the old, but coming up with something new. We're like paying homage to the old school stuff, but obviously with a whole new flavor and twist on it. And we didn't want it to be too bright. Some of those older Blue Note records, it had like a sort of darker tinge to it. We were looking for that style. Again, we were still very much into the fact that it was horns from New York. It's somewhat simple, but on another level, it's classic. Carmendelo's was back in the day, I had another house up in the Adirondacks that I used to, it was just a small little place that I used to go to get away from everything. We were on tour a lot, so it was a great place to just go into the woods and practice. And up there was a sax repair shop that I used to bring my horn to all the time. Jimmy and John Carmendello, they used to fix my sax, take care of me. Eventually I started doing some gigs up there. And, I always give a shout out to my sax guys. The Clowder is actually, at the time in my insane life, I had 6 cats. When you have a whole bunch of cats, they're called a clowder of cats. All my cats were strays off the street, and we were saving all these cats, beautiful animals. And, I was living with a whole bunch of cats, babe. They're a big part of my life. I love them. Buck probably helped fund that record. He either gave us some money for recording, or he helped actually produce some of the records. So we obviously want to give him props for that. He also connected us with Oswald Munich from Grover Records. There was a Euro release of that record as well. Buck was sort of the conduit there. So we definitely wanted to, give him some props for connecting us with this record company in Europe, which eventually would produce the next few for us. So it was just our way of saying thank you for hooking us in. The nice thing about a lot of these ska-jazz records is I don't have any regrets. We really had a certain kind of rawness that we were capturing, and I still like it. I think that the tracks still stand the test of time. It's a good feeling because some people will come back to some of their work and they're like, say they can't even listen to it. I still listen to these records and I still enjoy them. I remember it like we recorded it yesterday, and I think, the elements we've talked about just expanding the genre, having the faster tempos, more harmony, adding the vocals, keeping the level of the musicianship. We were really on top of that at that point. We were young, we were excited about the music, we were excited about a new band. I was thrilled to have something that I could really kind of call my own, that I could embrace, that I could put all my creative energy into.
I was really happy with that one. As much as I never like to go back and listen to stuff I've recorded after the fact, and every 10 years or so I'll revisit something, but I was happy with that one. I think it really came off well. But just the sound of the group is deepened, I think. And some things, like just basic things, like there's more percussion on that record than there was on the first. Kerry plays a lot more organ on the second record, and I think that contributes to the sound. And we added more guest artists just to kind of expand the palette a little bit. And so I think all those things really contributed, and I love every song that's on that album.
It's great being a sideman in other people's bands, but when you ultimately, become a leader or have your own project, there's a real self-satisfaction in, working on something and then creating a record. You have a real tangible element that says this is what we were doing back then. You know, we were growing, we were building, we did feel a little cocky, we felt good because we felt like we were on the pulse of something new, we were being embraced by people, by fans all over the world now, we were really hitting Europe well, so it was a very good, it was a growing period, it was a good time, felt good.